Episode 141 of CppCast, recorded March 14th, 2018. This episode of CppCast is sponsored by JetBrains, maker of intelligent development tools to simplify your challenging tasks and automate the routine ones. JetBrains is offering a 25% discount for an individual license on the C++ tool of your choice, CLine, ReSharper C++, or AppCode. Use the coupon code JetBrains for CppCast during checkout at www.jetbrains.com. In this episode, Jason and I catch up on 2 weeks worth of news. We discuss some big updates from Visual Studio and LLVM. And we talk about simplifying code with ifconstexpr. Welcome to episode 141 of CppCast, the only podcast for C++ developers by C++ developers. I'm your host, Rob Irving, joined by my co-host, Jason Turner. Jason, happy Pi Day.
Oh, that's right. We are recording on March 14th. I totally forgot that. I got, I'm remote doing training right now. Mm-hmm. And I got to the client's office and saw that there was a Happy Pi Day sign, and I'm like, wait, what? What day of the week is this? Like, I just completely forgot.
Yeah, I saw a Pi Day announcement at a meeting I was at this morning, and they also put down a note about how Stephen Hawking sadly died overnight, Pi Day morning. Yeah, very sad.
Yeah. Now, I feel a little bad following that up with the fact that Raspberry Pi just released a new Pi, Raspberry Pi, onto the Pi Day today.
Did they? Well, that's exciting.
Yes.
Yeah. I had a cookie pie.
A cookie pie?
Yeah. You know, some people call it a cookie cake, but it's close enough to a pie. And I got them to draw a pie on it.
One of those ginormous chocolate chip cookies?
Yeah.
Like feeds a family of 10?
Pretty much. I didn't eat the whole thing myself.
Like a 12-inch one all by yourself. Yeah. And that is how Americans eat food for our foreign listeners.
Yeah. Well, anyway, happy Pi Day. At the top of our episode, I'd like to read a piece of feedback. This week, or last week, we got two of these tweets. One of them is from Harold, and he wrote, shouldn't there be a new CppCast out already? Totally not used to anymore not having CppCast for the weekend. Hope everything is okay. So we were fine. I am sorry if anyone was genuinely worried about our well-being. But we are fine. I apologize for not announcing that we were probably going to miss an episode last week, but, Jason, you were doing some training and I was at a conference and we just couldn't find a time to record an episode, and we did a poor job of planning ahead and recording an extra episode.
We did, and I can take a lot of the blame for that because I am doing a lot of traveling right now.
Yeah, well, I've been doing a fair amount of traveling too, but I know on my side at least things are starting to calm down. I don't think you're calming down with your travel schedule anytime soon.
Sometime in June, my travel schedule slows down.
Yeah. But for our listeners, we do have several guests planned over the next few weeks, so hopefully we won't miss another episode anytime soon. And I do apologize that we missed one last week and didn't announce it ahead of time. Although we don't guarantee a weekly episode the way you do, Jason.
No. Yes. I've gotten comments from Jens and others that it was quite the bold move to name C++ Weekly C++ Weekly.
Yeah.
This is not CppCast Weekly.
It's not, although we do try.
We try.
Yeah. But yeah, hopefully we're not going to miss another episode anytime soon. Like I said, we got plenty planned. And if we do think we're going to miss one, I'll try to make an announcement beforehand so that people don't go wondering where the episode is.
Right.
Okay, well, we'd love to hear your thoughts about the show as well. You can always reach out to us on Facebook, Twitter, or email us at feedback@cppcast.com. And don't forget to leave us a review on iTunes. So we're not doing an interview tonight. We just have a lot of news to catch up on because we missed an episode last week. And this week, to start off with, Jacksonville is having their ISO C++ meeting, right?
We are smack in the middle of it at this moment.
Yeah. So I tried looking, and I'm not looking in the right place, but I didn't really see any notes or posts about what has been going on so far. We'll hopefully be talking to someone soon about what transpired at this week's meeting, but I haven't really seen much in the way of, this is getting voted in, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, it seems like Bryce at the last meeting was doing like a live kind of thing almost, that things had been approved. And no, we haven't really seen that this week.
No. However, one thing I did want to share is we've got this WG21 pre-Jacksonville telecon minutes, and it's a pretty light read. There's honestly not too much to glean from it. But when I was at the Microsoft MVP conference last week, I heard that there had been a new study group started. And it was something that we've actually talked a little bit about on the show recently when we were talking about, how it'd be great to have package management in C++, and it's something that maybe the ISO committee should try to address in the form of some new study group. And apparently there has been a tools study group that was started. It's SG15, and it's being led by Titus Winters. And I haven't really seen a whole lot of information about it. Like I said, I just kind of heard from some Microsoft people that this had begun. Gabby Dos Reis is involved in the group as well. And in this telecon meeting notes, there's just a brief note, SG15, Titus Winters, a lunch discussion is going to happen, I guess. And then there's been some email discussion, but it's a pretty light set of notes. There's not really much else to it.
Yeah, this is particularly light. And now, for those of us who are Stargate fans...
That's a special number, isn't it?
Well, there's several things here, because if you're just looking at this list, you're like, oh, SG1. Mm-hmm. Ooh, Olivier Guiraud heads that one. So, and there's notes from it. But, and I know I just butchered his name accidentally, but there was, this is completely off topic, but I'm going to go there anyhow because we can today. Last week, there was a tweet storm event that was planned to try to get interest back to start a new Stargate season, a new Stargate series.
This is off topic, but that's fine.
This is very off topic, but there was an overlap. Uh-huh. And then there ended up being several tweets from people on the standards committee about the possibility of creating some t-shirts or hats that are like Stargate SG something overlap, because all these study groups overlap with, Stargate kind of names. It's a
great intersection of nerdery.
It is, and it's a terrible, terrible diversion from our normal C++ news, but I am a huge Stargate fan. People who follow me on Twitter would not find that surprising, so.
I never got too much into the shows, although I did try watching the last one, I think, where they were on a spaceship that was kind of lost in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, that wasn't my favorite. I only got 5 episodes into that whole series, but I've watched the other ones multiple times through.
Okay. Have you heard anything else about this SG15 group that I haven't already, just to bring it back to the topic?
No, I have not.
Okay. Well, I am very curious to see, what's going on in that group. Like I said, the only members I'm aware of are Titus and Gabby Dos Reis. I'm interested to see if, they're interested in having other people, maybe having someone from CMake, someone from some of these existing package managers like Conan being a part of that group. But, I'm interested to see what's going on there. Okay. And then the next article we have is results summary from the C++ Foundation Developer Survey. And there was, I think I missed filling in the survey myself. Did you get to this, Jason?
I got about halfway through it, and then, I don't know, I hit some question that I'm like, you know what, I am not the responder that they're asking for questions for. Because I am a trainer and an experimenter and a researcher for the most part. Most of my code, except for ChaiScript, is not like real production code at this point.
Yeah.
So I stopped filling it out because I didn't want to like taint the results with, the random person that just plays with C++, basically.
Well, I think they're looking for everyone. I mean, I think your answers would still be valid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Might have been.
It looks like, and they tell you how many people actually answer these questions. That's interesting. So it's about 3,000 people total, but it seems like a lot of people did skip some of the answers. So they may have still gotten your results in here, Jason, and just marked you as skipped.
I don't think I ever hit submit. That would probably be But one of the main things that pops up is you notice these like word clouds about what people want. Package manager keeps coming up.
Yeah. Yeah, just to get back to that last point.
Yes, and I think package manager, the desire for one is reaching a tipping point right now.
Yeah, I see build system being mentioned in some of these word clouds a lot too.
Yeah. And I mean, I know we have listeners who work on package managers, and I know that all of them are probably screaming like, "But we have package managers; these are ready to go."
We know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, and next we got a series of articles from Visual Studio. Yesterday, I guess they released a new update or a preview for the next update.
Yes.
And this is Visual Studio 2017 15.7 Preview 1. And it's a bit of a mouthful. That's what Microsoft does, I guess. This first one is really exciting. Clang format support in Visual Studio 2017. Obviously, Visual Studio has always had its own set of refactoring tools built in, and they're now just adding support for Clang format out of the box. We kind of talked about this recently with that group that made a Visual Studio plugin that could use Clang format.
Clang Power Tools.
Yeah, Clang Power Tools.
Yeah.
But this having some built-in Clang format support is pretty exciting. And apparently it's like just completely out of the box. You don't need to point it to an existing install of Clang that you downloaded yourself. They're including it within Visual Studio, I guess. And they're including some of the default formatting styles. So you could stick with the Visual Studio style, or you could switch to Google or Mozilla or whatever some of the built-in Clang format styles are.
Yeah, and I've been working with a client and talking to students and stuff and mentioning Clang format and saying, this is almost a standard at this point. And I think at this exact moment, like yesterday, we can say this is officially the standard that we have settled on as a community for how to format our code.
Yeah.
You plop a .clang format file in the root of your source directory, and now every IDE will have some idea what to do with that by default.
That was one question I just had. Was that an existing convention to have this .clang -format file?
Yes.
Okay. Does the tool itself just pick up on that?
It just picks up on that. Yeah. It takes the current source file and looks up until it finds one.
Right.
So, and this is becoming our de facto standard for lots of things now, like .clang tidy. You can put in there what rules you actually want it to do. And there's, a handful of other static analysis tools and stuff. They all look for these files at the top of your source directory and just expect to do the right thing.
That's great. And I love that you can have different ones in subdirectories to make, if you want for some reason to have different code styling in a certain subdirectory, you can do it that way.
Yeah. Yeah. This is going to be important for if you're doing some sort of, enforcement of styles, but you've got an external package that you have in. You don't want to
style differently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Great stuff. Next one, also from Visual Studio, is C++ code analysis improvements for VS 2017 15.7 Preview 1. And this is kind of interesting because, we're used to seeing them always adding lots of new features. With this, they're actually turning on the C++ core check by default when doing code analysis. Before it was just an option. And not only are they turning it on by default, but they're removing the UI that lets you turn it off. They really want you to use the C++ core check. if you do still want to turn it off, you still can. You just have to do it by like manually editing the project file, or if you're invoking, MS build from the command line, then you can turn it off that way. But yeah, that's pretty bold for them to say, yeah, everyone should really be using this when you do code analysis. We're gonna have everyone use it.
I'm going to have to definitely play with this because I want to know what like the signal to noise ratio is with this. I'm sure they didn't make it the default thing if it's, going to be just whiny with a bunch of projects, but I am very curious.
Yeah, and they are having, I guess, different rule sets still. So you can do the recommended or the minimum rule set. So if you think it is too noisy, you can probably switch to the minimum set and be fine.
Right.
Those ones should definitely get fixed. Yeah. Anything else you wanted to call out in this one, Jason?
Not on this one, but I do want to make a different note before we move past the news on the Visual Studio 2017 15.7 Preview 1 announcements.
Yeah.
And that is, there's like just a side, like, it's just like a single statement in the full release announcement that says, and, oh, by the way, class template deduction is working, which is the main C++ 17 feature that I've been waiting for from Visual Studio.
Yeah.
It doesn't, there's not enough detail to say if it's, fully implemented, if deduction guides and everything else work, but I am very anxious to play with that when I have the chance, because I've been waiting for that one. Some of the talks that I gave on C++ 17 at the last couple conferences, that's the thing that's been holding me back from using Visual Studio for C++ 17 work.
Would that just be mostly in kind of demo projects, or are you making use of it in CppCast? Or would you want to make use of it in CppCast, rather?
I have a branch waiting to go. Mm-hmm. Once Visual Studio can support it, that will become my develop branch, and then I can move forward with real C++ 17 work on it.
Okay, so you can pull down this update and check out your branch and see if it works.
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, as soon as I have the chance to. And I'm not on hotel Wi-Fi.
Right. Okay, and then one more update from the Visual Studio blog. And this is Linux C++ workload improvements. And, we talked about the Linux stuff that they were doing a while ago. And it's great to see that they're still investing into, adding more functionality to the Visual Studio ability to build, compile, and then debug on a connected Linux box. It's pretty amazing.
It is. I personally can't see doing this. I am kind of curious about who uses it and why they use it this way and such.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to use it just because I don't often go into the Linux world, but I mean, they're getting feedback and creating new features and improvements based on that feedback. So there must be the user base out there who, I guess are just maybe typical Windows users and are getting tasked with Linux stuff. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, and to be fair, we cannot deny the fact that Visual Studio's debugger is considered world-class. It is one of the best.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if you had the ability to use the full debugger and could stick in an environment you're comfortable with, that might make sense.
Yeah, if I had to do some Linux debugging and I could do it with this, I certainly would choose to.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Switch from the Visual Studio announcements. A big announcement from LLVM. They're having their 6.0 release. And we've talked probably about a couple things that are contained in this release. I know we've talked about the Ret Pauline Inspector Variant 2 mitigation. Is there anything else really big that is worth mentioning, Jason?
Well, if you target the ARC64 CPU, which I have no idea what it is or where it's used, and I'm actually familiar with a lot of random architectures. That one I need to understand. And the hexagon target. Anyhow, I think from my perspective, the important news here is not actually listed in these release notes.
And what would that be?
Everything that was C++ 20 that was in flight on LLVM trunk is in this release.
Oh, okay.
So if we go to cppreference.com right now and look at its list of what the compiler conformance is, we can see all of the LLVM or Clang 6.0 things that for C++ 20 that are supported. And I think probably the most notable thing to our listeners is that the three-way spaceship operator that Herb Sutter proposed last year and was approved in C++ at the last committee meeting is now something that you can play with in an official compiler release and test it.
That's great. Do you need to use any like special flags in the compiler in order to use it?
You would
default?
just, right now, you would do --std equals C++2a.
Yeah, that's one thing I noticed in the release notes, that they say 2A instead of 20. Is that just kind of them hedging their bets that it might be C++ 21, God forbid?
Yeah, and I mean, this has been like an ongoing thing. Early conversions of GCC and Clang, when they were trying to support C++ 11 before it was released, it was C++ OX.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and it was OX.
OX, right.
Because we were hoping that it would come before 2010. And then it was, and then people joked, well, no, that was a hexadecimal number, right? So it's like OXA or whatever. And then we got C++ 1X. And then before C++ 14 was official, that was C++ 1Y. And before C++ 17 was official, that was C++ 1Z.
Okay, I don't remember.
So now we're on C++ 2A.
Gotcha. So C++ 23 will be 2B, we can presume?
Presumably.
Okay.
And both Clang and GCC are doing this the same way.
Okay. Now, a more in-depth article we have from Tony Albrecht, who's an engineer at Riot Games. He's doing this series on profiling, and this is actually the second part of the series, which is profiling optimization. And he's going into some optimizing for memory access. And he really walks through, you know, the process of analyzing the code, using a performance analyzer, and looking for possible, you know, improvements to be made, and showing the types of things that you can do. And I thought it was a pretty good post.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting. And, you know, we basically effectively denormalized his data from a database kind of standpoint. Is that right? Or normalized? Oh, shoot. No, I can't remember which way that goes. Instead of having everything created in one structure, has a structure with pointers that point to other tables of data effectively.
And that's kind of like the data-oriented design approach, right?
Yeah, I believe this is it. So you're only looping over well, I think data-oriented design would have multiple vectors that have anything have the same index. And this is pointers to the other things, which makes me wonder how much more performance he could have gotten if he had done the pure data-oriented design.
Although one thing he points out is, you know, his example is he has an object and it has like a bounding sphere. Each object has a bounding sphere and it has a position or whatever. And he's allocating those using an allocator that is, you know, being used for all the bounding spheres. So all the bounding spheres are, you know, allocated in the same block of data. So I don't know, does that make it count as data-oriented design?
Probably.
Balazs, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a games programmer. My initial gut is, well, if I wanted to do this, I could simplify it by, instead of having pointers to bounding spheres that have custom allocator, I could have reference wrappers to bounding spheres that are just in a vector that's right beside me that has the same exact index, or maybe even just an ID that points to the other index or something.
Right.
But I'm not a game programmer.
One thing that I'm interested in, and I need to read the first post, and I'm looking forward to seeing the following post, but he kind of quickly mentions Chrome tracing in the first post, which I need to fully read through. And he's got this screenshot, which is from League of Legends, which is a game that Riot Games puts out. And in his screenshot, it has this profiling overlay. And I guess that is something that you can do with Chrome tracing. I've never heard of that, but it looks amazing. Yeah,
there are a few tools. Oh, man, and for the life of me at the moment, the names are escaping me. But we've seen this kind of thing like at some of the poster presentations at CppCon last year, where you might be able to do like a profile run or a call trace of some sort and generate the kind of data that Chrome is able to visualize for that with that feature. And some neat stuff.
Yeah. I mean, that seems really useful to be able to actually run your application or run your game in this case and be able to see a performance bottleneck kind of as it happens. I wonder how well that works.
I've never seen anything that did it live. That's for sure.
Yeah. And like I said, this is just a screenshot. So I'm curious to see, how well it works in practice.
Yeah. The unspoken thing here is actually running at like 1 FPS or something.
Right.
But I mean, I'm just joking for our listeners, but if that's actually what it took to be able to see the live data, that could actually still be very beneficial.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Okay. And then the next one, and I'm sure you liked this article, Jason, is simplifying code with if const expr in C++17.
Yes. I'm pretty sure Bartek is a listener of the show also.
Yes. And I think we're going to be getting him on sometime soon. Yeah.
Sneak peek.
Yeah.
My only, yes, I totally 100% agree. If const expr can simplify our code in many ways. My only comment is in some of his examples, like the toString example, it would have been better served with a simple overload that took a string that participated in overload resolution with the template than it would have been with SVN in that example.
Right.
So you just make another version that takes a string and one that takes a template, and then the one that takes a string would just be called.
Yeah.
I don't know. I could be missing some other thing that he was trying to demonstrate, but...
Well, I really appreciated this post because, he shows what you would have had to do prior to if const expr to make some of these functions. And like you said, there's SVN, there's enable if, and all of his examples with those are, kind of significantly more complicated and a lot less readable.
Absolutely.
Than the if const expr method of doing it. So it's nice to see those examples and see kind of the power of it.
Yeah, it is pretty good. Simplified a lot of code in my branch that I am waiting to merge into CppScript.
Nice. Okay, and then this last article is an overview of L values, R values, GL values, PR values, and X values. And I haven't seen anyone put this together in like kind of a graphical table. Yeah. And I thought that was really useful.
Yes. I definitely recommend reading this one.
Yeah. And it's broken out really easily whether, L values have identities, R values do not, and whether they can move or cannot be moved. And just laying them out in a table format really kind of makes it a little more simple to understand. The post doesn't go into like a full explanation of what it means to be an L value versus an X value or an R value versus PR value. But it kind of just explains the differences without going into too much detail.
Yeah, and I find from the perspective of teaching, and I might get other teachers that listen to this disagreeing with me, that trying to get your students to know exactly what an L value, an X value, a PR value, a GL value, and an R value, understanding the technical definition of these things is not beneficial, generally speaking. Mm-hmm. But having this graph that says, oh, okay, that's something I can move from, that has an identity, that can't, where do these things come from? That's way better than digging into the descriptions from the standard.
Yeah.
And I also, it reminds me of an Absil tip of the week.
Oh, okay.
Name counting. I think it was name counting. So it's tip of the week number 55 that I had seen, and
I'm looking it up right now.
This is name counting and unique pointer. This might not be the episode, the one that I am looking for. But my understanding that there was one of these that was talking about basically keeping track of how many copies of things are made based on just counting the number of times a thing is named. Mm-hmm. This is unfortunate. That might not be the one I'm looking for.
Okay, well, I'll put a link to the abseil
Oh,
tips.
here we go.
Oh, you found it?
Well, I just see a comment at the bottom of it. Name counting is a handy trick in modern C++ to those who aren't expert in the subtleties of L values, R values, etc. It can help you recognize the possibility of unnecessary copies and will help you to use unique pointer properly. So, yes, okay. It is tip of the week 55 that I was thinking of.
Okay, well, I'll put a link to that in the show notes as well. So yeah, I think that might be it for today, Jason. Like I said, I apologize again for us missing an episode last week, but we will be back next week. I think we'll be talking more about Jacksonville next week, right?
Hopefully.
Yeah, and
hopefully lots of interesting things to talk about.
Yeah, and we've got more interviews planned for the next few weeks, so we shouldn't be missing another episode anytime soon. And thanks for listening, everybody.
All right, later.
Thanks so much for listening in as we chat about C++. I'd love to hear what you think of the podcast. Please let me know if we're discussing the stuff you're interested in. Or if you have a suggestion for a topic, I'd love to hear about that too. You can email all your thoughts to feedback@cppcast.com. I'd also appreciate if you like CppCast on Facebook and follow CppCast on Twitter. You can also follow me at Rob W. Irving and Jason at LeftKiss on Twitter. And of course, you can find all that info and the show notes on the podcast website at CppCast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com. Website at CppCast.com. Theme music for this episode is provided by podcastthemes.com.